Okay, morning everybody. Welcome back to Sanhedrin. Last week we didn't learn because we had the Levaya of Hillary, and we'll dedicate the shiur to her memory. Itachaya bat Avraham, and the Shama should have an aliyah. Right. Who remembers what my homework was last week?
The week before.
Yeah, the week before. I know it's a big ask since we couldn't even remember it from an hour the other
Absolutely
day.
not.
Okay, David, I'm sure that you remember it because it was you that prompted it.
No.
No.
I mean,
Okay.
It's bad enough remembering something after 1 week, but after a fortnight, it's impossible.
Okay. Well, the homework was that I set myself. David suggested that there was a mitzvah obligation, let's put it that way to start with, on a woman to be sexually available for her husband.
I remember now. Yeah.
And I said I did not think that that was the case, that there certainly wasn't a deoraita. The deoraita...
Because I said that he could divorce her if she wasn't available.
That's a different question. That's a different question. I said that it was certainly not a deoraita. The deoraita is on the man to provide conjugal rights to the woman. And I said I did not think that there was, certainly I was sure there was not a deoraita, and I was pretty sure there wasn't a derabanan either on the woman. And I said I would look it up, and I said I would ask my my rabbi doctor group and my Rav Rimon. Anyway, I got a very full answer, and I looked it all up, and it is really quite clear, although not straightforward. It's clear that the mitzvah. Hang on, let me just get up my notes a second. I want to get so I don't get it all wrong. There we go. Right. So it's clear that the mitzvah is only on the husband to provide conjugal rights for his wife. That's called ona, as we talked about last time. It is part of the ketubah, and it is a Torah obligation of the man to provide conjugal rights to his wife. The halacha does not obligate the woman to be available for sexual intimacy with her husband. Okay, there is no obligation. Now, David mentioned the mitzvah of pru'uravu, the mitzvah of procreation, which is also a mitzvah only on the man. Now, you're going to tell me that a man can't do that without a woman. And you were probably right. And I only say probably because who knows these days with what's going on with people changing their genders, etc. But again, whilst clearly it takes two to tango, the requirement, the mitzvah of pru'uravu, falls only on the man. Now, that is a very, very important distinction. I'm digressing a little bit now, but it's an important distinction to make because it impinges very, very strongly on the practical application of contraception. Okay, so a man has an obligation to procreate. Halachically, a woman does not have an obligation to procreate. And therefore, all other things being equal, which they're not, but all other things being equal, a woman taking contraception to prevent herself becoming pregnant is not a failure to perform a mitzvah aseh. Whereas a man taking used to call it taking precautions in the old. Used to say taking precautions in the old days, isn't it? Didn't we? A man taking steps, shall we say, to prevent a pregnancy could be considered to be over a lav, or it could also be considered to be not doing a mitzvat aseh, a positive commandment, which does not apply to women. And now that has very, very strong implications halachically, because when a couple discuss their contraceptive needs with a doctor or a rabbi or both, and there is a hierarchy within the methods of contraception of what is halachically more acceptable and what is halachically less acceptable. And part of that hierarchy is to do with the fact that the mitzvah of pruruvu only falls on the male. So that's an important little digression. But coming back to conjugal rights now, irrespective of pregnancy. And so I asked the question to David at the end of the last time shiur, what about a woman who is infertile, has had a hysterectomy or what have you? The concept of conjugal rights is not exclusive to the mitzvah of procreation. And a husband has an obligation to provide conjugal rights to his wife. And Hannah is, of course, correct that there are opinions who say that a man has justification to divorce his wife should she refuse conjugal rights to her husband. That's a different thing to saying that it is a halacha that she must. There's a subtle distinction there, which you'll understand. So the straightforward answer to our question is, as I said last time, there is no obligation on the woman, but it is accepted that behavior of, i.e., what I described as shutting up shop and not providing conjugal availability to her husband is considered to be not the correct behavior without justification. If there's justification for it, then obviously that's a different story. So in fact, the Shulchan Aruch itself and the Rosh hold that the husband may have grounds to seek divorce in that scenario. The Bet Din, however, would have to consider whether there is justification. And for example, if the husband is causing emotional, physical, or psychological pain, then she may be fully justified in her behavior. So it's not straightforward. It's clear, the halacha is clear, but it's not straightforward. There is a concept which is discussed in the Gemarah, in Masechet Ketubot, which is obviously the right place for it to be described. If you want to look it up, it's on Daf Samach Gimel 63. And a woman who refuses intimacy deliberately to cause her husband distress, in other words, she uses it as a tool, it's called a moredet. A moredet. What's the root of that word?
Yored.
Limrod. Limrod, which means to rebel.
Yeah.
Okay. If you are mored b'malchut, you rebel against the king. We've had this in our Tanakh shiur. If you rebel against the king, then you are chayav mita. You possibly a capital offense. So the word moredet is a feminine form of mored. She's called a moredet. She is a rebellious woman. And in that situation, according to the Gemarah in Ketubot, even there, coercion is not allowed. So even if you have a situation, and this is really, really important because I want to discuss this in its historical context in a minute. Even if you have a moredet, you have a woman who incorrectly and against not against the halacha, because we said it's not a halacha, but against the Jewish approach is a moredet and deliberately refuses conjugal rights to her husband in order to cause him distress, even in that situation, the husband is not allowed to coerce her. Okay, now that is massive when you think about the historical context. It is not that long ago where in so-called enlightened modern society, a woman was considered a chattel of her husband, and her husband had the right to coerce her. Julia may know this better than me, but rape within marriage is a very, very difficult problem to prosecute. It's a very difficult situation to prove.
All rape is, but I don't know any better than you.
Yeah, I seem to recall when I read up about this many years ago. I must have been doing some kind of talk about it. That it's not that long ago that actually rape in marriage was not possible in English law. It wasn't possible to prosecute somebody for rape, a husband against a wife. I could be wrong on that. Somebody can ask ChatGPT later on if they want. But it's if you think about the historical context here, or a law book even, yes. How passé, Julia, a law book. David, I'll never forgive you for this, introducing me to ChatGPT. My life is going to be different forever now. So think about this for a minute.
Johnny, it won't, because you are a medical profession, and I would highly doubt you turning to ChatGPT for a diagnosis.
No, well, if I did, I'd check it out first.
Exactly.
Sure. Yeah, so if you think about this in its historical context, we're talking Torah was given 3,300 years ago. The Shulchan Aruch, which I just quoted you, that says you cannot coerce. Oh, no, sorry, wrong. The Gemarah in Masechet Ketubot, which says you cannot coerce a woman, was written 1,500 years ago. Shulchan Aruch, written 500 years ago. Nevertheless, despite the fact that he's written thousands and hundreds of years ago, women are given far more rights and protection than far more modern, so-called modern societies. And I think that's just worth thinking about that and considering how revolutionary, really, the Torah and the Halacha is in that regard. Certainly, there are aspects of Judaism which are misogynistic, and I will argue with anybody that says the Torah is not in any way misogynistic. It is in certain elements, but there are certain elements like this which are super modern and super protective of the woman.
I've just finished reading a book called The Mad Woman in the Rabbi's Attic by Gemarah Sanhedrin, which is all about women in the Talmud, and analyzes them and deconstructs the stories, indicating that everything is far more feminine and feminist than than on first reading. Really
excellent.
One sec,
Hannah, I'll come to you in a sec. That sounds a fascinating book. Gemarah Sanhedrin is an excellent writer and lecturer. I think we are in the process of trying to get her to come and speak to us here in Netanya. But that's interesting. Maybe is it the kind of book that I would enjoy, Julia?
I think it's an amazing book. I want to.
Yeah.
I never read anything twice, but I'm going to read this one again.
I'll put it on my list. Unfortunately, I'm stuck in. Again, I have to blame David Marks for this. I'm stuck in Ani Ma'amim by Rabbi Joshua Berman. I can't get past the first 50 pages. I keep having to go back and read them all over again because it's so brilliant and deep and difficult to understand without. And you know me, I'm super analytic. I can't go past a sentence without reading it 10 times. So maybe, Lee Nader, when I get to the end of that, I'll start on that one. Yes, Hannah.
So I don't know if this is relevant or not, but I had an enlightening moment about a week or so ago when, probably to do with this. In Hebrew, the word for husband is Baal. And in our modern society, Baalut is considered as something of ownership. And there's a lot of flack goes out because, the husband doesn't own the wife. He's not my owner. But it suddenly struck me that it's not that the root of the word. The root of the word, I think, is from boel, which is to be intimate with. And I think the interpretation should be that it's somebody, your husband or your Baal in Hebrew is somebody who you are exclusively intimate with and not anybody else. And I think that in modern language today, we've sort of messed up the translation of the term. That's all. It was an epiphany that I had.
I think it's a very interesting observation. Let me just fill in Avril links on our conversation because she joined a little late. We're talking, Avril, about my homework from last week, which is about conjugal rights and who has to give conjugal rights and who doesn't. And we've got on to the point I said that there is the Gemarah even speaks about a woman who refuses conjugal rights to her husband cannot be coerced, which is a super modern and super revolutionary idea, really, if you consider about its historical context, because it's not all that long ago. And maybe you can answer this question I asked Julia. I think that it's not long ago that there was no such thing in British law as rape within marriage. So certainly there is a concept of rape within marriage in Jewish law. A man who coerces his wife would be guilty of rape because it's not allowed to do so. So that's what we were talking about. Now, to come back to Hannah's point, it's a very interesting observation, Hannah, but I'll just make one sort of caveat to it, and that is that I think it's a bit chicken and egg, because the verb to be intimate of ba'ilah, okay, to be intimate, actually is connected to the word ba'al, which means owner. So you could argue it the other way around. You could argue that the language says the husband is the, inverted commas, owner of the wife, and therefore he has a right to be intimate. Or you could argue it the way you said, which is much nicer, and that is that the word Baal, he's a husband because he's the only one that has the right to be intimate with her. And it's a chicken and an egg situation, but you're absolutely right to connect the two together there. Just as an aside, I once looked this up. Does anybody know the origin of the word husband in English?
Is it husbandry, which is farming?
Okay.
Yeah, I also thought of husbandry, but it's
again, it's chicken and an egg. Husbandry and farming is the procreation, isn't it?
Looking after animals, because I think that's what
husbandry is breeding animals.
Yeah.
So it's a chicken and an egg again, if you'll pardon the pun. A husband breeds with his wife, and that's why it's called husbandry. But the actual origin of the word husband is from Old English, right? Hus is the same as house, and bondi actually, but I once looked this up, that's why I know it. Bondi, B-O-N-D-I, I think it is, means owner, Baal. So husband means the house owner, literally. So that's interesting, isn't it? That the word husband is connected to the Hebrew word Baal, and therefore I think the two things are connected. Anyway,
Balabayit.
very interesting.
If you went,
Balabayit, there you go. Balabayit, yes, Balabayit.
but if you went back and looked in the Torah or in the literature to see where the word Baal is first used, you would get an insight into whether the chicken or the egg came first.
Okay, well, I
Wouldn't
don't
you?
know whether this is the first use of the word Baal, but there is certainly a very powerful use of the word Baal. Let's say, come on, David Marks, you're really good at reading my mind. What am I thinking about?
I think the first Baal in the Torah is in Parshas Vayishlach, Baal Hanan, as one of the relatives of Esav.
Okay, that's a name. Yeah, okay, fair enough. It wasn't what I was thinking. I was thinking in the Torah, Baal is the name of the Canaanite god.
Yeah, Baal Sfon.
Baal Sfon, Baal Peor.
Yeah.
So the gods of pagans are called Baal something. So does that help us, Hannah?
I don't think so. I
No.
also thought of
Well-
Baal. The only connection I could make was Baal, the god, the Avodah Zarah, idol
Yeah.
worship. But
Exactly what
there
I
must
said.
there must be a place where, like we're learning
Because
in
remember-
Shmuel Bet, like we're not learning, we're not there yet. When Avshalom takes David's concubines, or when
we've got about 7 or 8
got-
chapters yet before we get there.
yeah.
Let me just
or when
remind you, though. Let me just remind you that in Torah Hebrew, what is the word for a husband in Torah Hebrew? Not Baal.
Ish.
Ish. Yes, Ish. So we
Which is
say
Isha,
Isha.
is
Isha.
a wife. I was going to say this. Isha, a wife, is the same as Isha, a woman. So that's a bit derogatory, really.
Well,
because
Ish
it could
is
be
a man.
substituted any woman, any wife.
Okay, same for man. Ish, man, Ish,
But
husband.
we've now got a modern word for husband.
Yeah. So
a
in the
specific
Torah,
word, whereas it hasn't changed for woman.
correct. In the Torah, has it changed for woman? No, it hasn't. That's true. But in the Torah, the word Isha, this is for the Baalei Kriya amongst us. David will tell you that you must be very, very careful with the word Isha. Aleph, Yud, Shin, Hey. The way you pronounce it, correct, David?
Yeah.
Come on, tell us all about it.
But if it's a mapik in the hay, it's Isha, which means her husband, whereas Isha without the mapik is just a woman.
A woman, correct. So you have a particular, there was, where did we read it? A few weeks ago, we had it in the beginning of Parshat something or other, can't remember now, where it says about a woman who is divorced from her husband. Isha, Grusha, Me'isha. So the same word, Isha and Isha, but one's got a dot in it, this mapik, and you have to pronounce that. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense. Otherwise, it means a woman who is divorced from a woman. Well, actually, today you can have that as well, I guess, but not according to halacha. That's not what the Torah means. Isha, Grusha, Me'isha. So you have to be careful with that. Right. So that is the interesting thing about the conjugal rights. Let me just have a check of my notes if there's anything else that I missed on that. Coercion we talked about, moredet we talked about. Yeah, so the other thing is that the Shulchan Aruch talks about. We talked about the moredet, the refusing woman, the rebellious woman who refuses and uses it as a weapon against her husband. She cannot be coerced into sexual relations, but the Bet Din can sanction her. And how do you think the Bet Din can sanction her?
Refuse to let her go to the mikveh?
Well, that's one of her tricks. Remember, I told you a couple of weeks ago about the case of that Elisheva had, where the guy wanted a pilegesh, and it's how this whole thing started. That case was because his wife refused to go to the mikveh. So, what do you think the sanction might be against the woman who is a moredet?
He doesn't have to give her mezonot.
Well, sort of, yeah.
He doesn't have to provide for her.
Yeah, he can divorce her, as you said at the beginning, Hannah, and the Bet Din has the power to what's the word? Annul, that's the word, or decommission the ketubah. He wouldn't have to give her the money that he would be obliged to do on the grounds of the ketubah.
That could be really, really severe, because evidential, you've got his word against hers, and a man who is looking for a way out could very easily say, this is the situation, when it may not be true. That would be really...
Well, that's the case in any court, isn't it?
I mean, because you're talking about evidence, and as I said before, rape was very difficult anyway. But to sanction somebody
I'm not suggesting that they did it willy-nilly.
It might be one in every
the expression,
7 million or whatever it is.
Yeah, who knows? Who knows? But the point.
No, but in a case where the one that you happen to bring, where she won't go to the mikveh, that's very easily provable.
That could be evidence.
Yeah,
that's very easily provable.
Yeah,
you go to the Baladin and you say, is she coming or is she not coming?
It may well be that she admits. She may well say yes.
Yeah, what I'm talking about is where it's contested.
Yeah, of course. Well, I mean, I think that's a situation in any situation. Anyway, fascinating subject. I think we've done it justice. If we sum it up by saying like this, the halacha applies to a man. It's a deoraita, a Torah law that a man has to provide all sorts of things for his wife, including conjugal rights. It is not halachically obligated for a woman to be sexually available to her husband, but it is encouraged, and it is severely frowned upon to weaponize sexual intimacy, such that the Bet Din has the power in certain circumstances, let's put it that way, to allow this as a grounds for divorce, and also to reduce the ketubah settlement in that scenario. The thing that I wanted to stress is that all of the poskim going way back into history stress that although sexual intimacy is an important part of a relationship, it must be done not without concern, without emotion, and without the appropriate relationship going on in a loving, respectful, and considerate manner on both sides. And again, I want to stress the point that if you look at this in its historical context, it reflects very, very well on the Judaism's approach to women's issues on this regard, far better than certainly 20th century Western values. So I think that's a very interesting topic that we've gone through there. Before we hit the Gemarah now, because we're not finished with the X-rated stuff yet. We're going to go and do a bit more of the X-rated stuff in the Gemarah now. Any further comments on that topic before we go on to that?
Can I just again bring in something that might be totally irrelevant? in terms of this ownership business. This ownership business doesn't sit well with me. I don't like being owned by anybody. But maybe the fact that a father, because I just read something that said a woman goes from ownership by her father to ownership by her husband. But that's not exactly true, because from the age of 12 and a half, a daughter, is considered an independent person. And even under the age of 12, if her father marries her off to somebody she doesn't want to be married to, she can refuse to be, she can divorce or whatever, but she can set herself free from this person. So it doesn't seem to me to be the primary ownership, doesn't seem to be the primary definition of the word.
Well, you've answered your own question, and I think you've answered it very well. We don't need to get hung up on the idea that Baal is an owner. You've proved that that's not necessarily the case, and it may well be, therefore, that your egg has come before your chicken. In the example that you gave earlier on,
it's a concept that I don't like for people
there
to
are,
own
I mean,
other people.
If I wanted to be devil's advocate on this point, which I don't really, because I want to get onto the Gemarah, but if I wanted to, I could point to you to the laws of vows, which where a father or a husband does have the ability to annul vows of his wife, which would sort of imply some sort of ownership. I don't want to get into that.
We've done it.
You know, we've mentioned it, and I think it's important, and I think you raised it very, very eloquently. And I think there are arguments on both sides, but I do think that the takeaway message should be that the Torah cares about women's feelings far more than is often given credit for.
I've just seen that prior to 1991, forced sexual activity within a marriage was not considered to be illegal in England.
There you go. See, I was right. Oh, and that's without ChatGPT. Wonderful. Right, let's do some Gemarah.
10 out of 10 for your homework, Johnny.
Yeah, how many?
11 out of 10.
11 out of 10. Oh, wow, that's good. I never got that in school. Right, let's go to the Gemarah. The Gemarah is on the screen for you. We are on 21a, page 123. If you're in the Steinsaltz, you should be able to see it now. We're right at the top of the page of 123. We're still talking about David HaMelech. Remember, we started all this business because we wanted to know how many wives. We know that Shlomo had 700 wives and 300 concubines. Didn't really. I mean, those are just exaggerated numbers, but he had a lot. And we said, well, the Gemarah said, well, how many should he have had? And we went through all that performance with the kahena, and we came to the conclusion, at least somebody came to the conclusion, that David HaMelech had 18 wives, and that was the ideal, or at least that was the maximum. Johnny asked the question 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, how many wives was it usual to have? And we got the answer from ChatGPT, if you remember, that unless you were elite or very wealthy, then you only had one wife for obvious reasons. And we won't go into that in any greater detail. So that's where we got into all of this. So we've said, we're at the point where the Gemarah has said David HaMelech had 18 wives, and that was okay. Now, listen to this. Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Rav. Rav Yehuda says in the name of Rav, Arba me'ot yeladim hayu lo leDavid. David had 400 children. Right. So he's got 18 wives and he's got 400 children. Okay, who's good at mental arithmetic?
Is it about 20 each? Yeah.
Yeah, about 20 each.
Yeah.
22.22 recurring, if you really want to know. So well done, Julia. So 20 children each. Really?
Well,
No.
it is.
Well, you can go to the concept that today a rabbi's students are considered his children, even though they're not biologically his students. There's also a concept in Orthodox teaching that you owe more respect to your Rav than you do to your father, because the Rav brings you into the world to come, whereas your father only brings you into this world. So it depends on how you use the term children.
Okay, fair.
I was thinking in terms of, were handmaidens classified?
Okay. Okay. So this is great because we've now got a couple of different ideas to explore. Hannah says they weren't really his children. They didn't come from his own loins, as it were. They were his students or his followers or what have you. And Avril
says soldiers.
Okay, we'll come to that in a minute. And Avril says these were David's wild oats that he has been sowing. A lot of wild oats there, Avril, 400 kids. Anyway, let's have a look at the bottom of the page on Steinsaltz. You'll see it on the screen for you at the bottom under notes. Some explain that these children were sired not by David, but by David's soldiers. That the mothers were the beautiful women the soldiers took captive in David's wars, and David raised them in his court. Now, let's go back to the Gemarah itself and see what it's talking about. Let's go on. David had 400 children, v'chulam, and all of them, b'nei yefat to'ar hayu. They were all the children of beautiful women. What are they referring to? Which beautiful women?
Were taken captive in war.
The ones that were taken captive in war. And where do you know that from,
That was a story about the Yefat where they're taken captive and then they've got to cut the hair and make them, and they've got this time frame to decide whether they want to marry them or not.
Wonderful. And where would you find that if you wanted to look for it?
In the Torah.
Yes, very good. Could you be a little bit more specific, Hannah?
Well, it's, I'm not good at dividing things up into parshiot. But it's where he talks about when you go to war and you see a woman that you like and you want to take her, and so you take her home and do all the stuff.
Stop there. You actually gave me the answer there. Translate what you just said into Hebrew. The beginning of the first sentence that you just said. Translate it into Hebrew and you'll get the answer. Okay. What's another way of saying go to war? You go out to war. Okay, so very good, Johnny. Very good. We got there in the end. Ki tetzei la milchama. There it is on the screen for you. There it is. Ki tetzei la milchama al oivecha. When you go out to war, I'll take off the blue because I think it's easier for you to see without the blue. Verse 10, which is in the middle of the chapter. It's the beginning of Parashat Ki tetzei. Ki tetzei begins in the middle of a chapter, not the beginning of a chapter, which is not rare, but not that usual. Ki tetzei la milchama al oivecha. When you go out to war against your enemies, unatano Hashem elokecha biyadecha, and Hashem will give them into your hands. V'shavita shivyo, and you will take captives. Okay. V'ra'ita b'shivya, and you will see amongst the captives Eshet Yefat To'ah, a beautiful woman. V'chashakta va, and you will desire her. What Hebrew or Yiddish word do you see there?
Shiksa.
No, no. Cheshik, yes, cheshik. You ever said that, Johnny? I've got no cheshik for it. Yeah. We would translate that in modern English. It can't be bothered. Got no cheshik with it. Can't be bothered with it. Chashakta ba. Yeah, you would desire it, and you will desire her. V'lakachta lecha leisha, and you want to take her for a wife. So what have you got to do? All of those things that Avril started to tell us. V'heveita el toch beitecha. You have to bring her into your house. V'gilcha et rosha. There's the mapik hay, by the way. Rosha. Can you see that little dot in the hay? That means her head. She will shave. She has to shave her head. Why she got to shave her head?
Make her unattractive.
Make her unattractive. That's right. Va'asta et siporneha. And she's got to do her nails. What's she got to do with them?
That's great.
What she grow into talons.
Yes, you've got to let her nails grow and they come into talons. Today, that's meant to be attractive to have long nails. But back in the day, apparently, to have long nails, presumably without those gel things on and colours and all sorts of daft things they do today.
Wasn't it considered part of witchcraft?
Very
to have
likely.
long nails?
Very likely. Think about, if you close your eyes and imagine the witches of Macbeth, what did they look like? Yeah, the witches of Macbeth, they all had long nails and craggy faces and dirty hair and a funny pointed hat, right? But they all had long nails. Yeah, nasty business, long nails. So you've got to make her unattractive. Why? To make sure that actually, this is not just a bit of wanderlust on the part of the soldiers. Not finished yet. Vehesira etzimlat shivya, and then she shall remove the garment of her captivity. Me'aleha veyashva veitecha. She has to sit in. Well, they had prisoner of war uniforms.
Well, what I mean is, does it mean she'd be naked, or you dress her in something?
No.
Nice.
She's dressed not in captivity clothes. She's now progressed from being a captive.
But what I mean is, if she's had her hair shaved and her nails going to make her unattractive, is she wearing what sort of?
She's wearing civvies. She's now in the process of being changed from a captive woman to a wife. It's a process she has to go through. First thing is make her unattractive. Right, we've done that. You still want her? Right, now's the next stage. Next stage, take off her captive clothes and give her civvies, right? And she has to sit in your house. What's the vayashva veitecha? What's the importance about her sitting in your house?
So you can compare her with all the other women around in the context to see whether she would fit in as a wife for him going forward.
Okay, good one. What else?
Yeah, to see if your mum likes her.
She won't. Right? She's not of the faith, Johnny. She won't. Right? So go on. What else? What is the importance of a yoshva veitecha? She sits in your house. If she's sitting in your house,
she becomes part of the house. She becomes part of the household.
She learns the ways of the household.
All right. She learns the ways of the household. That's true. Good. What else?
But she also becomes part of it.
What's your responsibility here?
Whose?
The man.
Well,
he just has to accept the fact that she's there.
And
he provides for her.
Thank you very much. He's got to provide for her. But yashva veitecha means she sits in his house and he has to provide food, shelter, and everything else that goes with it. And what does he get in return?
Nothing.
Nothing. Exactly. Right. So you can see the process. First thing, make her look ugly. Secondly, you've got to look after her for how long?
A month.
A month, right? Not only have you got to look after her for a month without getting anything in return, uvachta et aviha ve'et ima yerach yamim. She has to weep for her father and mother for a full month. What happens when you weep for a month?
You become a misery.
You become
unattractive.
Misery, unattractive. Your eyes go all red and puffy, and yeah.
What if she doesn't? What if she's quite happy to be somewhere else?
Well, okay, well, if that's the case, well then maybe you've got a winner. But these are all the things that you have to go through.
Like the Americans coming over to England.
Yeah, they
think it's a better life maybe to go back.
What was the expression? They were overpaid, oversexed, and over here. That's what they used to say, wasn't it, about the American GIs? Yeah. So she had to weep for a father and a mother for a full month. And after that, if you still want her after she's not attractive anymore because she's got a shaved head and talons, right? And she's got red eyes, and she's been crying and she's been miserable for a month, and you've had to support her for a month and get nothing in return. And as you've all said, you've seen her behave in the household. If you like what you see still, then you can be sure that what you have seen is, and what you want her for, is not to be intimate with just as a matter of pure sexual lust, as Johnny said. Then he says, okay, then this shows that you've been through all that process. You still want her? Then there's something to this relationship. And again, I want to stress what we talked about earlier on with the other subject we were talking about, that this actually is very positive towards the woman. She's not just a captive woman you can do whatever the hell you want with. Bring her in, do what you want, and then discard her when you're finished. Look, even today, even in today's society, it is, I won't say accepted. I don't mean it accepted as in it's acceptable, but it happens. It is known to happen that soldiers go in war, rape women. It's happened throughout history. Rape, pillage, and theft is what soldiers did and do. They have to think about October the 7th, right? The Torah does not allow that.
I also had a feeling when we were reading this that also the month is for the soldier or for the man. Going to war and killing people becomes a very emotional thing. Your emotions, your adrenaline is on very high. And the month is also a cooling off period for him, that he's no longer in this high emotional state where he wants her, but he's also cooled off.
Very good. We'll come back to that. We won't get to it today, I don't think, but remind me, Hannah, your responsibility now, remind me to come back to that high emotional, adrenaline-filled state of war when we actually get there. You'll see, you'll know when I get to it, you'll know what I was talking about. So, very good. So, va'achakein, and after that, tavo eleha, and there's our word, Hannah, look at that word there, uve'alta. And he can be intimate with her. That's what Hannah was talking about half an hour ago. The word Baal being the root of being intimate with her. He's allowed.
Is that how you spell Baal, the god? Was it with an aleph?
No,
ayin.
It is with an ayin, yes.
Yeah.
V'haita lecha leisha. And she will be for him as an isha, a wife. Not a pilegesh, but a wife. So you can see the Torah is giving status to this captive woman. It's giving her an opportunity to be a wife. And look at the next pasuk. And then if you don't want her, v'shilachta lenafsha u'mechol lo timkerena b'kasef. You can't sell her on like you can a slave. If you don't want her, she has to go free. Another piece of status that is not usually accorded to a captive. The Torah here is stressing, and I don't know whether Gila Fine talks about this concept. I'd be surprised if she doesn't bring up the Eshet Yafat Torah somewhere in her theory about women and the Torah. But this is a very, very fine example of the positive light which the Torah sees women in.
The word wife is
If
used
the woman
twice,
doesn't like the
actually.
man.
Sorry, Johnny. First Julia, and then Johnny.
I was just going to say that the word wife is used twice. It's used in 11 and in 13, so it's emphasis.
Okay, interesting, because Eshet in 11, Eshet Yifat Torah is a beautiful woman. That is Isha, the woman. But by the time we get to...
No, at the end of it, you've got the
Isha. Sorry, yes, you're right. So she starts off being a woman, but at the end of this process, she becomes a wife.
But it's the same phrase, Lakach,
yes.
Isha.
Yes.
So it is emphasized.
Yes, very good. And it's emphasized again, as you say, in 13, right at the end. Johnny?
It said it doesn't mention her feelings anywhere. Maybe she didn't, she was a captive. Maybe she wanted to get back to her own family instead of crying.
Well, that's when she weeps for a month.
Yeah,
that's when she weeps for her mother and father.
Yeah. She was crying for them, and she wanted to get back to them.
Yeah, well, they're all dead, Johnny, because this is war, right? She's been captured. She's been captured. Right. So you're not allowed to keep her as a servant, right? Tachat asher inita, because you have afflicted her. This is called an affliction. You shouldn't be doing this. The Torah is telling you this, not because it's a mitzvah to do it. This is one of the things that we need to get straight in our heads about the Torah, that some people and some particular groups in particular have got all wrong. There is no, we say there are 613 mitzvot. Do you want to keep all 613 mitzvot, Johnny?
You can't.
You can't, but let's say you could. You had the opportunity. No, the answer is no, you wouldn't.
No.
Because
you can't be a man and a woman at the same time. You can't be.
You're right, but that's obvious. You know exactly what I mean. What I mean is there are mitzvot in the Torah that you're not meant to keep. You're only meant to keep them b'di'eved, and this is one of them, right? You are not meant to go out to war and deliberately find a beautiful woman so that you can bring her into your house, make her shave her head, make her grow her nails, make her cry for a month, then make her a wife, and then not send her away, right? In the same way as you are not...
Your favourite one with the bird's nest, isn't it?
Correct. It's exactly what I was going to say, John. Exactly.
It's your favourite one.
It is my favourite. You are not obliged to go and look for a bird's nest so that you can send away a mother from sitting on her eggs that you don't want. Absolutely not. And so this is a concept that, in my humble opinion, some people get completely wrong, that this is not a mitzvah in the Torah. This is b'di'eved. The Torah gives you a b'di'eved situation. The Torah recognizes, and this is where we'll come to Hannah's point in a minute, that in the heat of war, the adrenaline-filled heat of war, there is lust going along there. And there is the chance that you will, as a soldier, give into that lust and rape women. And you mustn't do that. The Torah is telling us it's a terrible thing to do. And it gives you an option, but instead of saying, no, you can't have anything to do with these foreign women, it gives you an option. You want this foreign woman? Okay, you can have her, no problem. But you have to go through this process, right? To make sure that's really something good that you want, and it's not just this lustful thing as we've spoken about.
But so, the Torah in its wording also says that, because it says if you good, thank you. If you go back to verse 11, and it says, and you see among the captives a beautiful woman. It doesn't say go look for a beautiful woman or go take a beautiful woman. It says if you happen to see one and you want her, then you have to do this. So it's not something you're, as you said before, that you're obliged to do. It just so happens that if it happens, then this is how you're meant to behave.
Correct, and that's absolutely right. And it's the same with the shiur hakem, with the, sending the mother away.
Yeah.
However, there are those who seek out these things, and I would say to them, those people that go and look for the bird's nest, I would say exactly what Hannah said. Why don't you then go out to war and find a beautiful woman to do the same thing? Stupid. And Hannah's absolutely right. Yes, David.
Yeah, have a look at. Have you got the art scroll there, Johnny?
I've got the art scroll Gemarah. Yes.
Yeah. Have a look at note 36, halfway down the bit in brackets, the sage's report.
The sages report that it was the practice of Gentile women to adorn themselves in time of war, and attempt to seduce the soldiers of an invading army. Okay, so
carry on.
The Torah therefore legislated to allow a soldier to engage in otherwise forbidden behavior under a controlled set of circumstances, to avoid the near certainty that many a soldier would give in to overwhelming temptation and act in violation of the law. Exactly as we've said. Thank you, David. I don't always sit in confluence with the art scroll, but on this occasion, absolutely.
Well, this is Rashi, the art scroll.
Yeah,
Rashi based on
I'm more often in confluence with Rashi than the art scroll, but not always. Yes, Hannah.
No, I didn't know what to mean.
It was me, actually. I was just wondering when you were talking about the women bedecking and bejeweling themselves in times of war, whether that was actually a possible entrapment, that it was a way of tempting the soldiers in order to kill them.
Yes, I'm sure that's exactly what they meant. I think that's exactly what the Chachamim are saying, that it was the practice to do that, to entice them. And listen, we've got precedent in the Torah, haven't we, of women enticing men, and the men, stupid men, falling for it and ending up with tent pegs in their head. Who did that?
Oh, Yael.
Yael, very good. And who got the tent peg in his head? Anyone who got a tent peg in their head from Yael? Sisera, very good. Yes, Sisera, in general, got a tent peg in his head for his troubles. Samson and Delilah, you mentioned, the same idea. Yeah, we have precedent for that. Women are very good at enticing men. You've got Lot's children, Lot's daughters enticing Lot for a different reason, but the same idea. So yeah, I think that's absolutely right. It was entrapment. Right, we are out of time. Is this a good place to stop? Let me just see.
I think 2 words.
So for the benefit of people like me who don't have the Steinsaltz, could you complete that note, please, Johnny?
Yes, let's go back to the Steinsaltz then. Right. So some explain that these children were sired not by David, but by David's soldiers, that the mothers were the beautiful women the soldiers took captive in David's wars, and that David raised them in his court. Now that makes much more sense, because if you say, and we're going to see later on in the Gemarah, we're going to see why we say that these children, these 400 children of David's, were not officially children of David's. We'll see why either next week or the week after. But even if we say that they were sired by David, even if they're not considered children, let's say David himself sired them from the beautiful women, that's still 400 kids he's got to sire. That's a lot of kids for one bloke. So what the Rashi is saying there, that Steinsaltz is quoting, is that these, and this is much more likely, that these 400 kids were sired by his soldiers who had each captured one or two beautiful women captives. There you could certainly see that the army in totality could easily sire 400 children from these captive women. And that is what the Gemarah over here that we've started is going to be talking about. And I'll just do the next 3 words as a taster for next time. All of these 400 children were the offspring of these beautiful women. Umegadlei beloriot hayu, and they all had their hair grown in beloriot, which Steinsaltz translates as a Gentile hairstyle. Art Scroll translates it as sporting long locks of hair. This is the source of the fact that when you are in yeshiva, the Magid, the mashpia or the mashgiach will come round and tell you when it's time to have a haircut, because it is considered chukas agoy to have long hair. So this is the root of it. Umegadlei beloriot hayu. We'll start next time with the idea of Gentile hairstyles.
There's a picture of it. There's a picture of it there, Johnny.
There is, but I'm not showing you that picture now. You have to wait till next week for the picture.
Yeah.
Did we look at beautiful women, which actually is a note above it, which covers what we've been discussing, but says it slightly differently.
It does, and I'm going to come to that later. Any questions about today's X-rated shiur?
We've come a long way from the number of judges.
We have, haven't we? We have, but it's taken us nearly 6 years to get there, Julia. So yeah, okay, very good. But Ezrat Hashem, we will have a quiet week.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Johnny.
Bye.
Thanks.